Hi everybody, thanks for joining us for a special edition of CEP Live. It's actually the second edition today because the first edition had some technical problems and we were sort of getting sideways on ourselves, literally. So thanks for joining us. If you're on the first one and now you're coming back, thanks for sticking with us, and if you're here for the first time, we're glad to have you. So you may have heard about the recent Kansas Corporation Commission decision that will impact solar users in Kansas. I'm joined today by CEP's Executive Director, Dorothy Barnett, who is going to help us all understand the impacts of this decision and what we can do to support solar power in Kansas. Welcome, Dorothy.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks to CEP staff for getting this hooked up and putting us, through the paces with our technical challenges.
And literally setting us to rights.
Yeah, definitely. So, as you likely have heard in the news over the last week, there was a decision recently by the Kansas Corporation Commission that has a lot of content in it. It dealt with a lot of issues. We're going to zero in specifically on the demand charges that were approved for solar customers. It was a Westar rate case. Solar customers, anyone who has installed solar actually since October of 2015 is going to be required to go on this new residential demand rate. And that's what we're here to talk with you about today.
Okay, so can you help us all understand, Dorothy, why is this happening now?
So I think it's important to note that although the demand charges were just approved last week, this has really been an ongoing battle, if you will, for residential solar customers in particular. In 2014, there was legislation to get rid of a mechanism called net metering. Net metering is the way that people who generate their own power and put some of that power back on the grid can get payment for that. And so there was an attempt in 2014 to get rid of net metering. We were able to work with some other advocates and with the utilities to keep net metering in place, lower size limits, a little bit lower payback. And the big piece of that was allowing the utilities to charge someone differently if they wanted to, if they had residential solar on their homes. We know now that was a bad choice, but at the time, really felt like we might be able to make some inroads at the commission to support solar, and we've found that hasn't happened. In 2015, Westar brought a rate case, and as a part of that rate case, they asked for, at the time, a $50 per month charge for people who generated some of their own power. We were able to beat that back, and we were able to go through a process in 2017 that we felt like had a real opportunity to think about what's the future of Kansas. How do we want to move forward with not only utility scale clean energy, which we fully support and have supported for a decade, but how do we also take advantage of this price drop in solar, this opportunity to use the sun as well as the wind to really see where we're headed. We were advocating during that process for a study, a third-party independent study, to see how we could value not only the cost of distributed generation, but also how we could value the benefits. And unfortunately, the commission did not make a study a requirement.
Yeah, it's a pretty complicated mess, actually, or complicated situation, maybe is a better way to say that. It seems like there's so much potential for solar, and some states are really picking up and running with it. And the way we decide to manage it now is going to have impacts well into the future. And I guess I always thought the independent study seemed like just a wise, logical thing to do. I've always kind of wondered why that didn't happen. If you are also sitting there watching this and you're thinking, I've also had questions about this, that, or the other relating to solar power, please feel free to add your questions in the comments section underneath this video. And we have the lovely Jamie Hoffling running questions in the background, so she'll let us know if you have a question or comment as we're going through this.
We do have one.
Oh, well, we have a question already. What's our question, Jamie?
The question is, do businesses have to pay the same demand charges?
And so,
Maybe repeat the question.
yeah, so the question is, do businesses have to pay the same demand charges? And actually, I think it's important to know what demand charges are. And so a demand charge, the way it's been put forward in this docket, the way that Westar was approved for, is that for each megawatt, each kilowatt of demand that you have, that's how much energy you use, between the hours of 2 and 7 p.m., they're going to take the highest 15-minute incremental change, and that's what your demand is going to be billed on. The way that this has been put forward is from May through August, so those high summer peak months, the demand charge is $9 per kilowatt. During the other 8 months of the year, it's $3 per kilowatt. You are right when you say it's a complicated issue, and right now that demand charge for solar customers, it's mandatory for solar customers only, or small wind customers if you happen to be someone who is creating your own power. It really is something, interestingly enough, that businesses are used to managing. So demand charges are not unusual for businesses. They have processes and tools in place to help them know when to manage their demand. Unfortunately, as a residential home owner, you don't have that same tool or that same ability. I think we're going to do questions at the end as we move forward. So let's move on.
Please keep putting your questions in if they come. I know the demand charge stuff, I mean, and this is my job, but it is confusing. We have a lot of questions about it that come in from people, and somebody just said to us today, like, how are you even supposed to know what your demand is? Will it be on your meter? Will you be charged at the same if your demand is, at the peak time when everybody else is using energy, or if you do it in the evening? There's a lot of questions. I think there's going to need to be some answers for customers to be able to really navigate this. So we do encourage you to keep asking your questions, and we will get to them all, or most of them. But Dorothy, the thing that I think is kind of the sticking point for this is that demand charges, if I understand it right, that's one option for managing solar, right? Other states are doing other things, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the piece that there are lots of ways that you can think about how to manage a distributed resource. What we're seeing most states do is start with this idea of determining the value of solar. So are there benefits as well as cost? What we heard during all of the last 3 years of cases is that there's all these costs involved for the utilities and for non-solar users by their solar peers, folks who have solar. But we don't have any data that really outlines what that is, and we certainly don't look at what are the potential benefits. What kind of jobs are we creating from a solar industry, or what kind of jobs could we be creating from a solar industry? How are we impacting the environment and potential air quality if we can grow a distributed resource? How are we being more resilient if there are big storms, or if we have problems with our grids? What could we be doing in that case? It was really interesting. I sat on a panel this summer with some folks from out west, and listening to them talk about how distributed resources could really help their systems, their transmission systems, if they got to a level much greater than what we have today. But we're not having those kinds of conversations. What we're having instead are conversations about how a small number currently of solar customers, less than 1,000 across the state, are having such a negative impact on the rest of us. And so as things change, as we move from a more large scale plant fossil generated future to a more distributed future for solar, for small wind, for utility scale solar, utility scale wind. What does that future look like moving forward?
Yeah, and if there's one thing that I think CEP knows after all of the 11 years now of going out and talking to Kansas, it's really that people of all stripes want renewable energy. They want solar, they want wind, they have benefited greatly from the economic gains and the jobs from the wind industry, and they're eager for this next round, right?
Yeah, it was so interesting that unlike how many years it took us to get people to understand the value of utility scale wind power and how that could really benefit the state of Kansas, people just intrinsically get solar power. They all imagine someday maybe that could be me. I might not be able to have solar today, but I might be able to have it in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It is exciting to me to see how many people, again, of all stripes, people all around Kansas are really interested in what's going on with solar. To that point, we've gotten a lot of questions. Even we didn't ask for questions, we were getting people emailing us questions all over the place about what this means for me as a solar user. What do you mean I'm not going to be able to do solar the way I want, etc. So Dorothy, I know you've already kind of answered a lot of them in this discussion, but what are some other ones that are top of the list that we need to address right now?
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting opportunity for people to be engaged in this conversation in a way that they maybe haven't been before. So several of the questions that we got asked about how does the governor's race impact this KCC ruling moving forward. And one of the things that I would say is that we do have a governor's race in November, for those of you who weren't keeping up on that. Whoever the next governor is going to get to choose essentially 2 new Kansas Corporation commissioners. One appointment will be in March of 2019 and another appointment will be in March of 2020. And so the governor is going to have quite an opportunity to shape the Kansas Corporation Commission. The governor also makes appointments for the Citizen Utility Ratepayer Board, or CURB. They also make those appointments. So that's another way that the governors will be impacting our energy use moving forward. You asked a little bit ago, what are other states doing to grapple with this issue? And it's been really interesting. What we've seen is a lot of states at the governor's office, at the administrative level, are putting together a state energy plan. And they're looking for, what is that forward-looking future that we want as a state? Again, we've seen the benefits from large-scale investments in renewable energy, but how do we provide some choice for customers to maybe make some investments today that will lower their electricity bills in the future? So a governor could say, I'm going to focus on what is our energy future, whether that's for economics, whether that's for the environment, whether that's for a free market system. There are lots of ways that a governor could really weigh in on that.
So, correct me if I'm hearing you wrong, but I think that maybe you're saying it's important to vote.
You got that.
Yeah.
I am saying it's important to vote.
I think if I can hop on there for a second and remind everybody, if you're really passionate about voting and you want to see more people who care about climate and energy issues getting to the polls and voting for these issues, CEP has a program called Climate and Energy Voters Take Action. You could sign up to be a voter ambassador. It's very easy, fun, and impactful. So what else, Dorothy?
So the other question that we're getting a lot of is people want to know when these rate hikes for solar customers will go into effect. And so there are a couple things about that. As I mentioned, the commission approved and Westar asked to have this be retroactive for anyone who has installed solar since October of 2015. So if you fit into that category, the rate will go into effect as soon as Westar files their tariff. is what it's called. I didn't look today, but as of a couple days ago, they hadn't filed it yet. We think that they should have grandfathered existing customers in. And that's something that I think if you're a Westar customer, I think you should call and say, there's not that many of us, why didn't you grandfather us in?
Seems like a pretty raw deal if you made that investment and then to have this come on you like that.
The other thing I will say is while right now this is impacting Westar customers, Kansas City Power and Light also filed the same tariff where they're asking for the same $9 a month. Their time frame of day is a little bit different. I think theirs is maybe 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. But they also want $9 a month or $9 a kilowatt hour during the busy time of the year, that May through August, and $3 the rest of the time. They don't want to make it retroactive, so theirs would essentially go into effect when and if the tariff is approved, which will likely be before the end of this year. We don't have any indication that if the commission approved it for one utility, they're not going to go on ahead and approve it for the other. So I think it's something that KCP&L customers really have to watch.
So again, if I'm hearing you right, it sounds like even though you may be saying, I'm not a Westar customer, this doesn't impact me, that the KCC made this decision, it's going to shape energy policy.
It is.
Going forward, so it will affect everybody eventually.
Certainly anyone who is a Westar or Kansas City Power and Light customer.
I see.
The co-ops and the municipals aren't regulated in the same way.
Oh, right.
So if you're a co-op member or a municipal utility member, it's likely you won't have the same exact type of tariff.
Great, good to know.
Jamie, what additional questions do we have?
So we've been putting them on the bottom of the document there, so everything that's coming on Facebook.
All right, thanks again. I don't know if we said it on this time, but thanks to Jamie for running the questions in the background. So it looks like we've got that one from Jason Peterson. Thanks for joining us, Jason.
And the questions were, we've answered Jason's, when they go into effect and whether or not businesses have to pay those. Ian says, how does Westar logically defend the demand charge? That's a great question. In our testimony, we didn't think they did do a great job of defending the demand charge, but obviously the commission agreed with them. One of the things that we've really struggled with is, when you talk about, we've heard for a long time the utilities say, well, if you're a solar user, you're not paying your fair share of the fixed cost. You're not paying your fair share to maintain the grid, and you're pushing your cost over to your neighbors. I think about those customers who invested $10,000, $20,000 or more in their solar systems, and I wonder if I was a solar customer and I had invested that money and was saving 30, 40, 50% on my electricity bills, and you were an energy efficiency customer and you had spent your $10,000 to $20,000 on new windows and new doors and attic insulation and an attic fan and rim joist weatherization, and you were also saving 30, 40, or 50% of your power, I'm going to be subjected to this new demand charge because I'm generating my power. But you, as a customer who's just saving power, are not going to be subjected to the same kind of cost. That's a question, and I don't think we fully answered that.
Yeah.
Some of the other questions that have been asked is there a way to appeal the solar only rate? Great question, Jason. We see the next steps. Well, there's a couple of things. Number one, if the parties in the rate case, Sierra Club, Vote Solar, or CEP, we had 10 days to ask for a reconsideration of this decision. If that reconsideration is denied, then there is an opportunity to be able to appeal that decision in court. That's a long process.
No,
It's
that
an
is a long
expensive process, but that is something that could happen, is you could appeal that decision. However, the other thing that we think probably is likely is there has to be some legislation. This last legislative session, the Clean Energy Business Council, of which we work with, along with some other groups, the Kansas Industrial Consumers Group and others, worked to try to elevate the issues that we're talking about today at the State House. And we attempted to get a bill passed that would require the Kansas Corporation Commission to do a comprehensive rate study that would look at this issue, transmission issues, that would look at electric vehicle issues and battery storage issues, and really where have we been with energy and where are we headed with energy. That bill did not get a vote based on a technicality, on a rules objection. But what did happen was 66 House members signed a letter and sent it to the Kansas Corporation Commission saying, you know, we want a study. We want to see what the opportunities are to grow solar, not squash it. We want to see where Kansas is headed with our electricity rates and with our technology moving forward. So we anticipate that there will be some sort of legislation necessary in order to protect solar customers and solar companies.
Great. How are we doing on questions, Jamie? Do we have anything else?
There are more, and I can read them off to you.
Oh,
or
do you have one?
I've got them.
I also want to check to see if you got to all the ones that are above the Facebook questions, the ones that came in advance.
I think we did cover a lot of those. Moving forward. We will take a look at them online and try to answer them online as well after the live stream, or if anyone has an additional question that they didn't feel like they got to have dug into as much.
Oh, and hey, I bet in a couple weeks, CEP is probably going to be putting out some information about this, maybe a fact sheet, frequently asked questions. I even think we might be putting together a webpage to help you get under all of this under wraps. So if you feel like your question hasn't been answered, you wait, we will get to it. So what else, Dorothy?
Well, the other questions that I think are important, Ann Fell, who I know has a small wind system at her place near Winfield, and some solar, as I recall, is asking what options exist for getting off grid. You know, and I think that's a great question. Quite frankly, Ann, it makes me a little nervous to talk about that, because my concern for getting off grid and where we're headed with demand charges is that if we continue down this path where we're not thinking about what customers need and what they want, we're going to get a lot of people going off grid, people who can afford to get small wind or who can save for their solar. And then you're going to have a bunch of people who struggle with their electricity bills, who are going to be left on the grid paying for those costs. And so that concerns me. But I will say that the technology is changing, and some of our Clean Energy Business Council members just came back from Solar Power International, and I heard a lot of them say they have new opportunities for a combination solar and storage, and it's an affordable option. And so I think that as we see more utilities digging in their heels and trying to protect their old way of doing business, we will see innovation, and we will see individuals trying to figure out how to just be done with that old business model. So I don't have a specific answer, but I think we're moving more in that direction.
Yeah, you know, kind of to your technology changing point there, Dorothy, I think sometimes when things like this come down, it can be really discouraging, and it can make you feel like there's nothing you can do, or maybe you just put on a great big solar system and you were really looking forward to the savings, and now you might feel a little bit despairing or disappointed or disenfranchised. I don't know, a whole bunch of words. Yeah, you may feel dissed. But I think that it's important to know, I mean, we've certainly felt like this before in this work, but things change. Things are always changing, and technology changes, as you're saying. Legislation can change, the rates can change, but I think the thing that's important to really emphasize is that nothing will change without you. Right. So if you're not engaged and you're not helping us do the work, leading in your communities, then yeah, things probably won't change in your favor. So.
Yeah, I think Rachel is right on. I think you're right on track there. You know, we have seen things change at the commission. When I started this conversation, I said in 2015, the utilities requested, Westar wanted a $50 a month demand charge, and thousands of customers wrote letters, made phone calls to the commission, and ultimately the commission said this is the wrong time to have that conversation. We need to move that to a different day. So it does, people can have an impact. I'm not sure why they didn't listen this time, because there were over 1,000 public comments, and a vast majority of those written public comments that came into the commission addressed this solar demand charge. So we have to keep fighting, we have to keep moving. Things that people can do is donate to this, to our work.
Oh, yeah.
You know, this is not this is expensive. It's not cheap work to be able to go out and organize and work on legislation and work at the regulatory arena at the KCC. So if you're so inclined to support the work, donate. There is a donate button on this live stream. We would love to have you support us financially. But if that's not something you can do, we really want your voice, and we really want your ideas about how to move forward. We are going to be coordinating a robust outreach campaign around this issue. And if you want to be engaged in that, you can send us an email, yes@savekansassolar.org, and say, hey, I'm concerned, I want to join you. We've already gotten a lot of people who have said, we are upset about this and we want to help do something about it. But send us an email and let us know. If you go to our website, climate+energy.org.
Yeah, no, that's not right. It's
no, climate+energy.org.
.org.
Boy, after a dozen years, you'd think I'd know
It's been
that.
a long day.
You can sign up for our updates and tell us that solar is the piece that you're interested in. If there's a specific thing that you want to know about.
And I think from our past campaigns, it's clear, like, of course, again, it would be great if you could donate. If you find yourself a little tight in the pockets today and you can't donate, then, as Dorothy said, reach out to us. Let us know that you might like to host an event in your community. You might like to have CEP come and talk to your Rotary Club, or
write a letter to the editor.
There's so many things that you can do. Civic engagement opportunities just abound. So.
One of the questions that someone asked was, would storage help shave some of the demand charges? And it certainly would. Solar would be an alternative to that. Unfortunately, not everybody can afford solar or storage right now, but that certainly is something, you're right, that would shave the demand charge. Let's see.
Any other questions that have come through there? Are you checking them out?
Added a couple more, so.
Okay, we have a couple other questions. Let us get this in order.
So Jason wants to know what happens to Westar demand charges when they merge with KCP&L as Evergy. And that's a great question, but what we know is, for now, and really for the kind of foreseeable future, the rate designs, the rates between Westar and KCP&L will be separate for a very long time. Some of you may be familiar with some other mergers that have taken place. Westar North and Westar South were the result of a merger, and they have different rate structures even today, and that was many years ago. So it won't change the fact that there is going to be a Westar demand charge. Somebody else wants to know if they can install or use solar on their house but not hook up to the solar, into the utilities electrical lines.
That's being called off-grid, right?
Yeah, that's being off-grid. If you're not going to use them in times of backup, you can be off-grid. There isn't anything that requires a person to take electricity service. But what I will say is, if you are connected in any way and generating your own power, as a residential customer, I'm not seeing any way in the tariff that you can avoid being on the demand charge at the current time.
While Dorothy's looking to see if we have other questions, I just want to mention a really easy thing that you can do right now is on your Facebook live stream, there's like a heart or a thumbs up. Give us a thumbs up if you like what you're seeing. You all have heard, I'm sure, about the wacky Facebook algorithms. The more this is liked, the more you share it. Even if you give us a thumbs up now and then like us on your page and share it and have your friends like it, that will help us get this news out. We don't have, probably no big surprise to anyone, we don't have a huge advertising budget. That's why we're doing this in the Lawrence Public Library, thanks to the Lawrence Public Library, with our very basic setup. But help us get the word out, share it with your friends, send our newsletters, forward them on to your friends, however you want to do to get people more to be a part of this conversation, because the more of us that are in the know, the more of us are talking, the better off we're going to be.
Yeah, I just would say that there are real opportunities for Kansas. We have the second best wind resource in the nation, and we are using that fully. We are doing well. Westar's made big investments in utility scale wind power, and we've supported that all along. We're really excited about that. But we also think and know that there is a role for that distributed piece. If we're going to continue to use the sun for part of our power, and we have a top 5 resource in solar, if we could just get the policies right to make it economical and continue to be economical to use it, there's no limit on what Kansas could do to be a leader in the advanced energy economy. Rachel and I are a part of an organization that's several states called the REAMP Network, and we get so jealous when some of those partners are talking about their solar industry and how their biggest issue is they have so many solar companies just exploding in their states, and they're concerned about making sure that they're doing ethical work. I mean, our folks are really ethical. We just need to have them be able to do business in Kansas and not take their business to Missouri or to a surrounding state,
or to Wisconsin or Minnesota, that like our partners are in other states. I think that there are a lot of possibilities. There are a lot of solutions. We are full of hope all the time, and I think that one of the things that CEP is great at is saying that there are solutions that work for everyone. This solution doesn't work for everyone, but there are solutions that we could focus on that could be better. Anything else before we go on to thank everybody?
Somebody mentioned community solar, and I think that's something we haven't talked about. Community solar today, as it exists in Kansas, is only if the utilities want to create community solar. We don't really have processes in place for communities to create their own community solar, but it's certainly something that we should be exploring. And so thank you for that question. We're big fans of community solar. I think that's all I have today. Again, share our live stream. If you have specific questions we haven't answered, go on ahead and put them in the question box and we'll answer them online. And please do join us. This is an important issue. It's something that we really are passionate about. And we think that with you all, we can really, really make a difference.
Yeah. And if we haven't said it enough, we want to hear from you. We want to hear from the people who are watching this video, who are engaging in these issues. We want to hear from you. We want to help bring your voice into the conversation, so it can really be our work in Kansas. Thanks again to Jamie Hoffling, who has been running in the background there, and to everybody who's participated in this live stream. And make sure to go to our website. I just got a notification while we've been on this live stream. Someone signed up for our updates. So go to climate+energy.org. Send your questions to yes@savekansassolar.org. We are also on Facebook, as you know, if you're watching this, and Twitter. And I think we're going to be on Instagram soon. So keep an eye. We're trying to do our best to connect with you and to help you connect with your legislators and get involved. And so until next time, Dorothy, everybody, thanks for helping us lead the way to a clean energy future.
Thanks.